The morning sun cast long shadows across the military training facility as Sarah Martinez adjusted her tactical gear one final time. At 26, she had already proven herself in countless situations that would break most people, but today felt different. Today, she would face the kind of skepticism that had followed her throughout her entire military career. The obstacle course stretched before her like a mechanical beast, its steel frames and rope challenges gleaming in the early light. This wasn't just any training course. It was the legendary SEAL qualification course, a brutal test of physical and mental endurance that had broken even the strongest candidates. What made this morning particularly tense was the presence of Commander Jake Thompson, a 15-year SEAL veteran whose reputation preceded him like thunder before lightning. Thompson stood with his arms crossed, his weathered face showing the kind of skepticism that comes from years of watching hopeful candidates crash against the unforgiving reality of elite military training. He had seen hundreds of people attempt this course, and, in his experience, very few had what it took to earn the right to call themselves a SEAL. When he looked at Sarah, he saw someone who was clearly skilled. Her file was impressive, but he also saw someone who was about to learn that some things in the military were still reserved for a very specific type of person. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. Other trainees had gathered to watch, some out of curiosity, others hoping to learn something that might help them when their turn came. The instructors maintained their professional demeanor, but even they seemed to sense that something significant was about to unfold. This wasn't just another training session. It was a moment that would either shatter preconceptions or reinforce long-held beliefs about who belonged in the most elite units of the military. Sarah had grown up in a small town in Texas where her father, a retired Marine, had taught her that actions speak louder than words. From an early age, she learned that respect wasn't given. It was earned through dedication, skill, and the willingness to push beyond what others thought possible. Her journey to this moment had been filled with challenges that would have deterred most people, but each obstacle had only strengthened her resolve. Her military career began in the Army, where she quickly distinguished herself in intelligence operations. Her ability to think clearly under pressure and her natural leadership skills caught the attention of her superiors, who recommended her for specialized training programs. She excelled in combat medic training, became certified in multiple weapons systems, and earned her paratrooper wings with honors. But what really set her apart was her uncanny ability to read situations and people, a skill that would prove invaluable in the field. The path to SEAL training had been anything but straightforward. The program had only recently opened to women, and the decision to apply had not been made lightly. Sarah knew she would face scrutiny that her male counterparts would never encounter. Every mistake would be magnified, every success would be questioned, and she would have to prove herself not just once, but over and over again. Thompson's skepticism wasn't entirely unfounded from his perspective. He had seen the military change dramatically during his career, and while he wasn't opposed to evolution, he believed that certain standards should never be compromised. The SEAL teams operated in environments where a single mistake could cost lives, and he had lost too many good friends to be casual about who earned the right to wear the trident. What Thompson didn't know was that Sarah had spent months preparing for this moment with an intensity that bordered on obsession. She had studied every aspect of SEAL training, analyzed the physical and mental demands, and pushed her body to limits she never knew existed. Her preparation went far beyond the physical requirements. She had learned to control her breathing under extreme stress, developed mental techniques for managing pain and fatigue, and studied the tactical knowledge that would be expected of her. The morning briefing had been straightforward. Candidates would face a series of challenges designed to test not just their physical capabilities, but their ability to think clearly under pressure. The course included obstacle navigation, underwater challenges, weapons proficiency tests, and tactical problem-solving scenarios. What made it particularly difficult was the time pressure. Everything had to be completed within strict time limits that pushed even the most prepared candidates to their breaking point. As Sarah approached the starting line, she could feel the weight of expectations pressing down on her. Some people were rooting for her success, others were waiting for her to fail, and still others were simply curious to see how the situation would unfold. But Sarah had learned long ago to tune out external noise and focus on the task at hand. Her father had taught her that the only person she needed to prove anything to was herself. The first challenge was a rope climb that stretched 30 feet into the air. The rope was thick and rough, designed to test grip strength and upper body endurance. Sarah approached it with the confidence of someone who had practiced this exact scenario hundreds of times. Her technique was flawless. She used her legs to grip the rope while her arms pulled her upward in a smooth, efficient rhythm. Other candidates had struggled with this obstacle, some failing to reach the top, others taking so long that they fell behind on time. Thompson watched with professional interest as Sarah scaled the rope with the kind of fluid motion that only comes from extensive training. She reached the top quickly, rang the bell that marked completion, and descended with controlled speed. Her time was impressive, better than many of the male candidates who had gone before her. But Thompson had seen good athletes before who couldn't handle the mental pressure of the more complex challenges. The second obstacle was a series of parallel bars that required candidates to traverse a distance of 50 feet using only their upper body strength. Arms would burn, shoulders would scream, and mental focus would be tested as fatigue set in. Sarah approached the bars with steady determination. Her military training had taught her that pain was temporary, but quitting was permanent. She moved across the bars with mechanical precision, her breathing controlled and steady even as her muscles began to protest. Watching from the sideline, Thompson found himself reassessing his initial judgment. Sarah's technique was sound, her mental focus was evident, and her physical preparation was clearly extensive. But the real tests were still to come. The obstacles were designed to be completed in sequence, with each challenge building on the fatigue and stress created by the previous one. Many candidates who started strong found themselves breaking down as the cumulative pressure mounted. The third challenge involved navigating a series of walls of increasing height, each requiring a different technique to overcome. The first wall could be scaled with a running start and good timing. The second required rope assistance. The third was tall enough that it demanded both technical skill and the ability to maintain composure while problem-solving under pressure. Sarah had studied the techniques extensively, but studying and performing under stress were entirely different things. She approached the first wall with confidence, timing her approach perfectly to launch herself up and over in one smooth motion. The second wall required her to throw a rope over the top and use it to assist her climb. Her throw was accurate on the first try, and she scaled the wall quickly. But it was the third wall that separated the truly prepared candidates from those who were simply athletic. The third wall stood 12 feet high with no handholds and no assistance allowed. Success required a combination of technique, timing, and mental focus that many candidates found elusive. Sarah stood before it for a moment, visualizing her approach. She had practiced a technique that involved using momentum and precise timing to reach the top, but executing it while already fatigued from the previous obstacles was a different challenge entirely. Thompson leaned forward slightly, his professional curiosity fully engaged. This was often where good candidates began to show cracks. The wall didn't just test physical ability. It tested problem-solving skills, mental resilience, and the ability to execute under pressure. He had seen strong candidates stand before this wall for long minutes, second-guessing themselves into failure. Sarah backed up several steps, took a deep breath, and began her approach. Her running start was perfectly timed, her jump was explosive, and her technique was flawless. She reached the top of the wall with authority, pulled herself over, and dropped down on the other side with the kind of controlled landing that spoke of extensive training. Her time was still well within the acceptable range, and she showed no signs of the mental fatigue that often affected candidates at this point. The underwater challenge came next, and this was where Thompson expected to see cracks begin to show. Candidates had to retrieve objects from the bottom of a 12-foot pool while holding their breath, then surface and immediately move to the next obstacle. The challenge wasn't just physical. The psychological pressure of being underwater while already fatigued had broken many strong candidates. Sarah approached the pool with the same calm focus she had shown throughout the morning. She took several deep breaths to oxygenate her blood, then dove cleanly into the water. Thompson watched as she descended quickly to the bottom, located the required objects with efficiency that suggested excellent underwater navigation skills, and surfaced with time to spare. Her breathing was controlled as she immediately moved toward the next challenge, showing no signs of panic or disorientation. What impressed Thompson most wasn't just Sarah's physical performance, it was her mental composure. She approached each challenge with the kind of systematic preparation and execution that he associated with the most successful SEAL operators. There was no wasted motion, no second-guessing, and no visible signs of the anxiety that affected most candidates. As the morning progressed, It became clear that Sarah wasn't just completing the challenges, she was excelling at them. Her times were consistently strong, her technique was sound, and her mental focus never wavered. But Thompson knew that the most difficult challenges were still ahead, and he had learned never to judge a candidate's potential based on early performance alone. The weapons proficiency test required candidates to demonstrate accuracy with multiple weapon systems while moving between firing positions under time pressure. This wasn't just about marksmanship. It tested the ability to transition between weapons, maintain accuracy while fatigued, and execute complex firing sequences without mistakes. Sarah had always been a strong marksman, but performing under the pressure of evaluation while already physically stressed was a different challenge entirely. She approached the weapon stations with the same methodical preparation she had shown throughout the day. Her shooting stance was textbook perfect, her breathing was controlled, and her trigger discipline was flawless. More importantly, her ability to transition between weapons and firing positions was smooth and efficient. Each shot was deliberate and accurate, and she completed the course well within the time limits. Thompson found himself increasingly impressed despite his initial skepticism. Sarah wasn't just meeting the standards, she was exceeding them. Her performance was the kind that would have drawn positive attention even among a group of male candidates, and she was doing it while carrying the additional pressure of being one of the first women to attempt SEAL qualification. The final challenge of the morning was a tactical problem-solving scenario that required candidates to navigate a complex obstacle course while making strategic decisions under pressure. This was where many technically proficient candidates struggled, because success required not just physical ability but the kind of tactical thinking that was essential for SEAL operations. Sarah studied the scenario carefully, taking time to understand the layout and identify potential challenges. Her approach was methodical and thoughtful, showing the kind of tactical awareness that couldn't be taught in a classroom. She navigated the course with confidence, making smart decisions about routes and timing that demonstrated real understanding of tactical principles. As she crossed the finish line, Thompson realized that his assumptions had been completely wrong. Sarah hadn't just proven that she could complete the challenges. She had demonstrated the kind of comprehensive skill set that he associated with the most promising SEAL candidates. Her performance had been consistently excellent across all areas of testing, and she had shown the mental toughness that was absolutely essential for success in elite military units. The other candidates who had been watching were clearly impressed as well. Some had expected to see struggle or failure, but instead they had witnessed a masterclass in preparation and execution. Sarah had not only met the standards, she had set a new benchmark for excellence that would be remembered long after this training session ended. But as impressive as her performance had been, Thompson knew that this was just the beginning. The real challenges lay ahead, and the morning's success would mean nothing if she couldn't maintain this level of performance under even greater pressure. What he didn't realize was that Sarah had been preparing for far more than just physical challenges, and the skills she would demonstrate next would completely revolutionize his understanding of what it meant to be truly prepared for SEAL operations. The afternoon brought a different kind of challenge, one that would test not just physical endurance, but the subtle skills that separated good soldiers from exceptional operators. Commander Thompson had designed this phase specifically to evaluate tactical communication and situational awareness, skills that were absolutely critical for SEAL operations, but often overlooked in basic training programs. The scenario was deceptively simple. Candidates would work in pairs to navigate a series of obstacles while maintaining silent communication with their partners. The catch was that they would be operating under simulated combat conditions, with instructors playing the role of hostile forces who would be actively hunting them. Success required not just physical stealth, but the ability to communicate complex information without making any sound that might give away their position. Sarah found herself paired with Marcus Chun, a former Marine who had impressed everyone with his physical performance during the morning challenges. Chun was skeptical about working with a female partner, not because he doubted her abilities. Her morning performance had made that impossible, but because he had never trained with a woman in this kind of high-stress scenario. His uncertainty was visible in his body language as they received their briefing. The mission parameters were challenging. They had to reach 3 different checkpoints scattered across a wooded training area, retrieve specific intelligence items from each location, and return to base without being detected by the roving patrols. The entire operation had to be completed within 2 hours, and any team that was spotted by the opposing forces would be immediately disqualified. What made this exercise particularly difficult was the communication restriction. Once they entered the training area, no verbal communication was allowed. Teams had to rely entirely on hand signals and other nonverbal methods to coordinate their movements. This wasn't just about staying quiet. It was about developing the kind of intuitive partnership that allowed SEAL teams to operate effectively in hostile territory. Thompson watched as the teams prepared for the exercise, paying particular attention to how Sarah and Chun interacted during the planning phase. Chun was clearly struggling with how to approach the partnership. His Marine training had taught him to be direct and assertive in his communication style, but he was uncertain about how to adapt that approach when working with Sarah. Sarah, however, approached the planning session with the same methodical focus she had shown all day. She studied the terrain map carefully, identified potential routes and challenges, and began discussing tactical options with Chun in a way that gradually put him at ease. Her knowledge of small unit tactics was impressive, and her suggestions were both practical and innovative. What Chun didn't know was that Sarah had spent months studying advanced tactical communication techniques, including hand signals that went far beyond the basic military standards. She had researched historical special operations missions, analyzed communication failures that had led to mission disasters, and developed her own enhanced vocabulary of nonverbal signals that could convey complex information quickly and accurately. As they prepared to enter the training area, Sarah made a decision that would change the entire dynamic of their partnership. She pulled Chun aside for a final briefing and began demonstrating a series of hand signals that he had never seen before. These weren't the standard military signals that every soldier learned in basic training. These were sophisticated tactical communications that allowed for precise coordination of movement and decision-making. Chun was initially confused by the unfamiliar signals, but as Sarah explained their meanings, he began to understand the tactical advantages they offered. The standard military hand signals were functional but limited. Sarah's enhanced system allowed for much more precise communication about threats, terrain, and tactical decisions. If they could master this system quickly, it would give them a significant advantage over the other teams. The first checkpoint was located in a dense wooded area approximately half a mile from their starting position. Intelligence reports indicated that at least 2 patrol teams were operating in the area, and teams that moved too quickly or carelessly would almost certainly be detected. Sarah and Chun began their movement with careful coordination, using Sarah's signal system to maintain constant communication about their surroundings. Thompson and the other instructors were monitoring all teams through a combination of hidden cameras and human observers positioned throughout the training area. What they saw from Sarah and Chun immediately caught their attention. Unlike the other teams, who moved in fits and starts as they struggled to communicate effectively, Sarah and Chun moved with the kind of fluid coordination that typically took months to develop. The key was Sarah's signal system. When Chun spotted a potential threat, he could communicate not just its general location, but specific details about numbers, equipment, and movement patterns. When Sarah identified a better route, she could convey detailed information about terrain challenges and timing considerations. Most importantly, they could discuss tactical options and make complex decisions without ever making a sound. Their movement through the woods was like watching a perfectly choreographed dance. Sarah would signal information about upcoming terrain, Chun would acknowledge and provide feedback about potential tactical considerations, and they would adjust their approach accordingly. Other teams were struggling with basic coordination, but Sarah and Chun were operating at a level that impressed even the experienced instructors. The first checkpoint presented a significant challenge. The intelligence item was located in a small building that was being patrolled by 2 opposing forces. Standard tactical doctrine would suggest either waiting for the patrol to move away or creating a distraction to draw them off. But Sarah had a different idea, one that would require precise timing and flawless communication with Chun. Using her enhanced signal system, Sarah explained her plan to Chun in detail. They would approach the building from opposite directions, with Sarah creating a subtle distraction that would draw one guard away while Chun moved to neutralize the second guard and retrieve the intelligence item. The plan required split-second timing and the ability to adjust tactics in real time based on the guard's reactions. Chun was initially hesitant about the plan's complexity, but Sarah's confidence and the precision of her tactical communication convinced him to trust her judgment. They moved into position with careful coordination, using the signal system to maintain constant awareness of each other's status and the positions of the opposing forces. The execution was flawless. Sarah created her distraction at precisely the right moment, drawing one guard away exactly as planned. Shen moved on the second guard with textbook precision, while Sarah maintained overwatch and provided real-time intelligence about the first guard's movements. They retrieved the intelligence item and exfiltrated from the area without either guard realizing what had happened. Thompson watched the entire operation with growing amazement. What Sarah and Chun had just accomplished represented the kind of tactical coordination that he typically saw only from teams that had trained together for months or even years. The precision of their communication and the sophistication of their tactical execution was extraordinary, especially considering that they had just met that morning. The second checkpoint presented an even greater challenge. Located on the opposite side of the training area, it required the team to cross several open areas where concealment would be difficult. Intelligence reports indicated heavy patrol activity in the area, and several teams had already been detected and disqualified while attempting to reach this objective. Sarah and Chen approached the challenge with the same methodical planning that had served them well at the first checkpoint. Using the terrain map and real-time intelligence from their observations, they identified a route that would minimize their exposure while still allowing them to reach the objective within the time constraints. What set their approach apart was the sophistication of their risk assessment and contingency planning. Using Sarah's signal system, they were able to discuss multiple backup plans and establish clear protocols for responding to various threat scenarios. If they were spotted, they had pre-planned escape routes. If the patrol patterns changed, they had alternative approaches. If equipment failed, they had backup procedures. The movement to the second checkpoint showcased the full power of Sarah's communication system. As they crossed difficult terrain, Chen could signal detailed information about his footing and movement capabilities, allowing Sarah to adjust their pace and route accordingly. When they encountered unexpected obstacles, they could quickly discuss alternatives and make tactical decisions without any verbal communication. Their approach to the second checkpoint building was a masterclass in small unit tactics. Sarah and Chun conducted a detailed reconnaissance using their signal system to share observations and coordinate their surveillance. They identified guard patterns, located potential entry points, and developed a plan that minimized risk while maximizing their chances of success. The execution required them to move through an area with multiple overlapping fields of observation from the defending forces. Using their enhanced communication system, they were able to coordinate their movements with precision that allowed them to remain undetected despite the challenging environment. Sarah provided overwatch while Chun approached the objective, with constant communication about threat status and tactical conditions. Chun retrieved the second intelligence item without incident, and they began their movement toward the final checkpoint. By this point, their partnership had evolved into something remarkable. They anticipated each other's movements, communicated with an efficiency that bordered on telepathic, and operated with a level of tactical sophistication that impressed everyone watching. The final checkpoint was the most challenging yet. Located in an area with limited cover and heavy patrol activity, it had already eliminated several teams who had attempted to reach it. The intelligence item was positioned in a location that required significant exposure to reach, and the defending forces had adapted their patrol patterns based on the tactics they had observed from earlier teams. Sarah and Chen approached this final challenge with confidence built from their earlier successes. Their communication system had evolved throughout the afternoon, becoming more efficient and precise as they developed shared understanding and trust. They could now convey complex tactical information with minimal signaling, allowing them to maintain better concealment while still coordinating effectively. Their final approach was a testament to everything they had learned throughout the exercise. They used every concealment technique in the book, coordinated their movements with perfect timing, and executed their plan with the kind of precision that comes only from exceptional preparation and flawless communication. When Chun retrieved the final intelligence item, they had not only completed the mission successfully but had done so in a way that set a new standard for tactical excellence. The movement back to base was conducted with the same precision that had characterized their entire operation. They varied their route, maintained constant vigilance for pursuing forces, and used their communication system to ensure that they remained undetected throughout their exfiltration. When they finally reached the base perimeter, they had completed one of the most impressive tactical exercises that Thompson had ever witnessed. As the exercise concluded and teams began reporting their results, it became clear that Sarah and Chun had accomplished something extraordinary. Not only had they successfully retrieved all three intelligence items, something that only two other teams managed, but they had done so without being detected even once by the opposing forces. Their tactical execution had been flawless, and their communication had been more sophisticated than what Thompson typically saw from much more experienced operators. But what impressed Thompson most wasn't just their tactical success. It was the way Sarah's innovative approach to communication had transformed their partnership. Chun, who had started the exercise uncertain about working with a female partner, had become a vocal advocate for Sarah's abilities. The experience had shown him that excellence in military operations had nothing to do with gender and everything to do with skill, preparation, and innovation. The other candidates who had observed portions of Sarah and Chin's operation were equally impressed. They had witnessed tactical communication and coordination at a level that most of them had never seen before, and it was clear that Sarah's innovations could benefit everyone if they could learn to apply them effectively. As the afternoon debriefing began, Thompson found himself reassessing everything he thought he knew about tactical communication and team coordination. Sarah hadn't just proven that she could perform at the same level as male candidates. She had demonstrated innovations that could improve the performance of all operators, regardless of gender. The signals she had developed represented a genuine tactical advancement, and Thompson was eager to understand how she had developed such sophisticated techniques. What he didn't yet realize was that the communication system he had just witnessed was only a small sample of Sarah's tactical innovations. The real test would come during the evening's challenges, when she would have the opportunity to demonstrate skills that would completely revolutionize Thompson's understanding of what modern special operations could achieve. The evening briefing room buzzed with quiet conversations as candidates discussed their performance during the afternoon tactical exercise. Exhaustion was visible on most faces, but there was also the satisfaction that comes from pushing personal limits and discovering new capabilities. Sarah sat quietly reviewing her notes, mentally preparing for whatever challenges lay ahead, when Commander Thompson approached with an expression that mixed professional curiosity with something that looked almost like skepticism. Thompson had spent the dinner break reviewing footage from the afternoon exercise, and what he had seen challenged fundamental assumptions he had held throughout his military career. Sarah and Chin's performance had been exceptional, but it was the sophistication of their communication system that truly bothered him. The hand signals Sarah had used were unlike anything in standard military doctrine, and Thompson couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right about the situation. Martinez, Thompson said, his voice carrying the kind of authority that immediately drew everyone's attention. I need to discuss your performance this afternoon. The room fell silent as other candidates sensed the tension in Thompson's tone. This wasn't going to be a routine performance review. This was something more significant. Sarah looked up from her notes with the same calm focus she had maintained throughout the day. Yes, sir. What would you like to discuss? Her response was professional and respectful, but there was no hint of defensiveness or anxiety. She had confidence in her performance and wasn't intimidated by Thompson's obvious skepticism. Thompson pulled out a tablet showing freeze-frame images from the afternoon exercise. These hand signals you were using with Chun, I've never seen them in any military manual. Where did you learn these techniques? His question was direct and challenging, carrying an implication that Sarah might have been using unauthorized or inappropriate methods. The room's atmosphere grew more tense as other candidates realized they were witnessing a confrontation that could have significant implications. Some had wondered about Sarah's unusual signaling techniques during the exercise, but most had simply assumed they were advanced methods they hadn't learned yet. Thompson's questioning suggested that the situation might be more complex. Sarah maintained her composure as she responded. Sir, I developed those signals through extensive study of historical special operations missions and analysis of communication failures that led to tactical disasters. I identified gaps in standard military signaling that could be addressed through enhanced techniques. Her answer was factual and confident, showing no defensiveness despite the challenging nature of Thompson's inquiry. Thompson's skepticism deepened. Develop them yourself? Martinez, those signals showed a level of sophistication that typically comes from years of specialized training. Where did you really learn those techniques? His tone suggested he believed Sarah was being dishonest about the source of her knowledge, perhaps claiming credit for skills she had learned elsewhere. The implication struck other candidates immediately. If Sarah had somehow gained access to classified training materials or had received unauthorized instruction, it could invalidate her performance and potentially end her military career. The stakes of this confrontation were becoming clear to everyone in the room. Chun, who had partnered with Sarah during the afternoon exercise, spoke up in her defense. Sir, I can confirm that Martinez taught those signals to me during our preparation briefing. I had never seen anything like them before, and her explanations of their tactical applications were detailed and innovative. His support was important, but Thompson's expression suggested he wasn't convinced. Sarah reached into her gear bag and pulled out a thick notebook filled with detailed diagrams, tactical analysis, and historical research. Sir, this contains my complete development process for the enhanced signaling system. I can show you the historical incidents that inspired specific signals, the tactical gaps I identified in standard procedures, and the testing methodology I used to validate the effectiveness of each technique. Thompson took the notebook with obvious skepticism, but as he began reviewing its contents, his expression gradually changed. The research was extensive and meticulously documented. Sarah had analyzed dozens of historical special operations missions, identified specific instances where communication failures had led to mission disasters, and developed targeted solutions for each type of failure she had identified. The notebook contained detailed diagrams showing how each signal could convey complex information quickly and accurately. More importantly, it showed Sarah's testing methodology. She had practiced these signals with training partners, measured their effectiveness under various conditions, and refined them based on real-world performance data. This wasn't casual innovation. This was systematic tactical development at a professional level. What impressed Thompson most was the theoretical foundation underlying Sarah's work. She hadn't just invented new signals randomly. She had identified specific tactical communication requirements that weren't adequately addressed by standard military procedures, then developed targeted solutions for each gap she had identified. Her approach was methodical, professional, and showed deep understanding of tactical principles. As Thompson continued reviewing the notebook, other instructors gathered to examine Sarah's work. What they found was a comprehensive tactical communication system that represented genuine innovation in military methodology. The signals weren't just different from standard procedures, they were demonstrably better for specific tactical applications. This is remarkable work, admitted instructor Rodriguez, a 20-year veteran who had seen innovations come and go throughout his career. The theoretical foundation is solid, the testing methodology is professional, and the tactical applications are clearly documented. This represents real advancement in tactical communication. Thompson found himself in an uncomfortable position. His initial assumption had been that Sarah was somehow cheating or misrepresenting her capabilities. Instead, he was confronting evidence of genuine tactical innovation that could benefit all special operations forces. His skepticism had been proven wrong, but admitting that would require acknowledging that his assumptions about women in special operations might be equally unfounded. Even if this work is legitimate, Thompson said, his tone still challenging, developing unauthorized tactical procedures is a serious matter. These techniques haven't been tested under real combat conditions, and their effectiveness could put lives at risk if operators rely on unproven methods. His objection showed he was struggling to maintain his position despite the evidence. Sarah's response was calm and well-reasoned. Sir, with respect, every tactical innovation in military history started with individual operators identifying gaps in existing procedures and developing better solutions. The standard hand signals we use today were once unauthorized innovations that proved their worth through practical application. Innovation is how military tactics evolve to meet new challenges. Her point was historically accurate and tactically sound. Military innovation had always come from practitioners who identified problems and developed solutions, not from bureaucratic committees. Some of the most important tactical developments in special operations history had originated with individual operators who saw better ways to accomplish their missions. Chen reinforced Sarah's position. Sir, I can personally attest that these signals provided tactical capabilities that standard procedures couldn't match. Our coordination during the exercise was more precise and effective than anything I've experienced using conventional methods. The practical benefits are undeniable. Other candidates who had observed portions of Sarah and Chen's operation nodded in agreement. They had witnessed tactical coordination at a level that exceeded anything they had seen before, and it was clear that Sarah's innovations had been responsible for that superior performance. Thompson realized his position was becoming untenable. The evidence clearly showed that Sarah's signals were legitimate innovations based on solid tactical principles and extensive research. Her performance during the exercise had been exceptional, and other candidates had witnessed the practical benefits of her methods. Continuing to challenge her work would only make him appear stubborn and resistant to beneficial innovation. But Thompson's resistance went deeper than simple skepticism about new techniques. Throughout his career, he had operated under the assumption that certain capabilities were reserved for specific types of people, and that the most demanding military roles required characteristics that weren't equally distributed across all demographic groups. Sarah's performance was challenging those fundamental assumptions in ways that made him deeply uncomfortable. "Let's say your signals are legitimate," Thompson said, shifting his approach. "The real test of any tactical innovation is performance under extreme pressure. Communication systems that work in training exercises don't always prove effective when lives are on the line and stress levels are at their maximum." It was a fair point tactically, and Sarah acknowledged it. "You're absolutely right, sir. That's why I've tested these techniques under progressively more stressful conditions, including scenarios designed to replicate the psychological pressure of combat operations. The signals are designed to be simple enough to execute correctly even under extreme stress." Thompson saw an opportunity to put Sarah's claims to a more demanding test. "In that case, you won't mind demonstrating these techniques under more challenging conditions. I'm designing a night exercise that will test tactical communication under maximum stress. If your innovations are as effective as you claim, this will be your opportunity to prove it." The challenge was clear, and Sarah accepted it without hesitation. "I welcome the opportunity, sir. I'm confident that these techniques will prove their worth under any conditions you design." Her confidence wasn't arrogance. It was the quiet assurance of someone who had prepared thoroughly and tested her capabilities extensively. Thompson began outlining an exercise that would be significantly more demanding than anything the candidates had faced so far. Operating in complete darkness, teams would have to navigate complex terrain while avoiding multiple hostile forces, retrieve time-sensitive intelligence, and coordinate complex tactical maneuvers without any verbal communication. The stress level would be deliberately maximized to test performance under the most demanding conditions possible. What Thompson didn't reveal was that he was designing this exercise specifically to challenge Sarah's innovations. He wanted to create conditions where her enhanced signaling system would be pushed to its absolute limits, hoping to find the breaking point where her methods would prove inadequate. If he could demonstrate that her techniques failed under extreme pressure, he could maintain his position that innovation and exceptional performance were limited to traditional special operations candidates. Sarah understood the subtext of Thompson's challenge, but she wasn't intimidated. She had spent months preparing for exactly this kind of test, developing techniques that were specifically designed to remain effective under the most stressful conditions imaginable. Her preparation had included scenarios that were deliberately more challenging than anything she expected to encounter in actual training. As the evening briefing concluded and candidates prepared for the night exercise, the tension in the room was palpable. Everyone understood that something significant was about to unfold, a test that would either validate Sarah's innovations and capabilities or demonstrate their limitations under extreme pressure. Thompson had set the stage for a confrontation that would resolve questions about tactical innovation, gender integration in special operations, and the fundamental nature of military excellence. Chun approached Sarah as they prepared their equipment for the night exercise. "Are you sure you're ready for this? Thompson is clearly trying to set up a scenario where your techniques will fail. He's not just testing your methods. He's trying to prove a point about who belongs in special operations." Sarah's response reflected the same quiet confidence she had shown throughout the day. "I understand what's happening, and I'm prepared for it. The techniques are sound, the preparation has been thorough, and the principles are tactically valid. If Thompson wants to test them under extreme conditions, I'm ready to demonstrate their effectiveness." What neither Thompson nor the other candidates fully understood was that Sarah's preparation had gone far beyond developing new signaling techniques. She had studied the psychology of performance under extreme stress, developed mental conditioning techniques that allowed her to maintain focus under pressure, and created systematic approaches to tactical decision-making that remained effective even when physical and emotional resources were depleted. The night exercise would indeed test her innovations, but it would also test Thompson's assumptions about capability, innovation, and the fundamental nature of military excellence. The stage was set for a confrontation that would determine not just individual success or failure, but broader questions about the evolution of special operations and the characteristics that define true tactical excellence. As darkness fell and the exercise prepared to begin, both Sarah and Thompson knew they were approaching a moment of truth that would have implications far beyond a single training scenario. The outcome would determine whether innovation and exceptional performance could come from unexpected sources, or whether certain capabilities would always be limited to traditional candidates who fit established expectations about military excellence. The training facility transformed into an entirely different environment as darkness settled over the complex. What had been challenging terrain during daylight became a maze of shadows, uncertain footing, and hidden obstacles that would test every aspect of the candidate's training and preparation. The night exercise that Commander Thompson had designed was deliberately brutal, a scenario that would push tactical communication and coordination to absolute limits under conditions of maximum stress. Thompson had assembled a team of experienced instructors to serve as opposing forces, giving them night vision equipment, radio communication, and detailed knowledge of the terrain. Their mission was simple: hunt down and eliminate any candidates they could locate. The exercise parameters were unforgiving. Teams that were detected would be immediately disqualified, and the intelligence objectives were positioned in locations that would require exceptional tactical coordination to reach safely. Sarah and Chun received their mission briefing in a darkened room lit only by red lights that would preserve their night vision. The objectives were scattered across 5 miles of wooded terrain, with each target requiring different tactical approaches and increasing levels of difficulty. They would have 4 hours to complete the mission, navigate back to the extraction point, and do it all while avoiding detection by opposing forces who knew the terrain better than they did. What made this exercise particularly challenging was the communication restriction. Not only were verbal communications prohibited, but the darkness would make even hand signals difficult to see and execute accurately. Teams would have to rely on tactical communication methods that remained effective under conditions where visual contact was limited and stress levels were at their maximum. Chin was visibly nervous as they prepared their equipment. The afternoon exercise had given him confidence in Sarah's tactical innovations, but operating in complete darkness while being hunted by experienced instructors was an entirely different level of challenge. He had never attempted anything this demanding, and the possibility of failure was weighing heavily on his mind. Sarah, however, approached the preparation with the same systematic focus she had shown throughout the day. What Chin didn't know was that she had spent months training specifically for night operations, developing techniques that were designed to remain effective under exactly these conditions. Her preparation had included exercises conducted in complete darkness, scenarios with actively hunting opposition forces, and stress inoculation training that had pushed her capabilities to their absolute limits. As they moved to the insertion point, Sarah began demonstrating additional techniques that she had developed specifically for night operations. Her enhanced signaling system included tactile signals that could be communicated through touch, vibration patterns that could convey complex information through equipment contact, and positioning techniques that allowed for communication through body language even when visual contact was minimal. The first objective was located deep in a wooded area that intelligence reports indicated was heavily patrolled. Standard tactical doctrine would suggest waiting for patrol patterns to be established before attempting to move, but Sarah had analyzed the intelligence and identified an opportunity for a more aggressive approach that could save valuable time if executed correctly. Using her tactile communication system, Sarah explained her plan to Chun through a series of touches and pressure patterns applied to his equipment. The technique was remarkably effective. She could convey detailed tactical information including timing, positioning, and contingency plans without making any sound or requiring visual contact. Chun was amazed at how much information could be communicated through this method. Their movement through the woods showcased the full power of Sarah's night operation techniques. She had developed methods for maintaining constant awareness of Chin's position and status even in complete darkness, allowing them to coordinate their movement with precision that would have been impressive even in daylight conditions. When obstacles were encountered, they could adjust their approach instantly through tactile communication. Thompson and the instructors were monitoring the exercise through night vision equipment and hidden sensors positioned throughout the training area. What they observed from Sarah and Chin immediately stood out from the other teams. While most candidates were moving slowly and cautiously, struggling to maintain coordination in the darkness, Sarah and Chun were moving with confidence and precision that suggested exceptional preparation for night operations. The approach to the first objective required crossing an open area where concealment would be minimal and detection was highly likely. Sarah had identified this challenge during the briefing and developed a specific plan for crossing dangerous terrain while maintaining communication and coordination with Chun. The technique required precise timing and flawless execution, but it offered the possibility of reaching the objective without detection. Using her tactile signaling system, Sarah coordinated their movement across the open area with timing that was measured in seconds. Chun could feel her communications about timing, direction changes, and threat status through equipment contact that was so subtle it would be undetectable to any opposing forces. Their crossing was swift and efficient, completed before the patrolling instructors realized what was happening. The first objective building was guarded by 2 instructors equipped with night vision and radio communication. Standard tactics would suggest either waiting for the guards to move or creating a distraction to draw them away. But Sarah had developed techniques specifically for operating against opponents with technological advantages, and she was prepared to demonstrate capabilities that Thompson had never seen before. Through tactile communication, Sarah explained a plan that required Chun to create a subtle distraction while she approached the objective from an unexpected direction. The technique relied on her ability to move through terrain in complete darkness with a stealth capability that she had developed through months of specialized training. Chun would maintain overwatch and provide real-time intelligence about guard positions through their tactile communication system. The execution was flawless. Chun's distraction was so subtle that the guards barely noticed it, but it was enough to draw their attention away from Sarah's approach route. Sarah moved through the darkness with a stealth capability that was remarkable even by SEAL standards, reaching the objective and retrieving the intelligence item without either guard realizing what had happened. Thompson watched the entire operation through night vision with growing amazement. What Sarah had just accomplished required capabilities that he associated only with the most experienced special operations personnel. Her movement techniques, tactical planning, and coordination with Chun represented a level of night operation expertise that typically took years to develop. The second objective presented an even greater challenge. Located in an area with multiple overlapping patrol routes, it required teams to penetrate a security perimeter that had been designed specifically to prevent exactly what they were attempting to accomplish. Intelligence reports indicated that several teams had already been detected and eliminated while attempting to reach this objective. Sarah and Chun approached the challenge with systematic analysis that would have impressed professional intelligence officers. Using techniques Sarah had developed for reconnaissance under adverse conditions, they were able to map the patrol patterns, identify timing windows, and develop an approach plan that minimized their exposure while still allowing them to reach the objective within the time constraints. What set their approach apart was the sophistication of their tactical coordination. Through tactile communication, they were able to share detailed observations about guard positions, timing patterns, and potential approach routes. More importantly, they could adjust their plan in real time as conditions changed, maintaining tactical flexibility while operating under conditions that had overwhelmed other teams. Their penetration of the security perimeter was a masterclass in small unit tactics. Sarah and Chun moved through the area with coordination that allowed them to remain undetected despite the challenging environment. When unexpected obstacles were encountered, they adapted their approach instantly through communication methods that allowed for complex tactical decision-making without any detectable signals. The second objective required them to operate in close proximity to patrolling guards while retrieving the intelligence item. This was the kind of scenario that separated exceptional operators from merely competent ones. Success required not just stealth and tactical skill, but the mental composure to execute complex tasks while under immediate threat of discovery. Sarah's approach to the objective was textbook perfect. She had studied the psychological aspects of operating under extreme pressure and developed mental conditioning techniques that allowed her to maintain focus and precision even when stress levels were at their maximum. Her retrieval of the intelligence item was smooth and efficient, completed without any indication that the guard suspected anything unusual. Thompson found himself reassessing everything he thought he knew about tactical capabilities and training effectiveness. Sarah's performance was consistently exceeding the standards he associated with the most experienced operators, and she was doing it while carrying the additional pressure of proving herself in a role where she faced skepticism from the beginning. The third objective was positioned in terrain that would test every aspect of their night operation capabilities. Located on elevated ground with excellent observation capabilities for the defending forces, it required an approach that would be nearly impossible to execute without exceptional tactical coordination and technical skill. Sarah's analysis of this challenge revealed an approach option that other teams had overlooked. By utilizing advanced movement techniques and precise timing coordination, it might be possible to reach the objective through a route that the defending forces hadn't adequately covered. The plan was complex and required flawless execution, but it offered the possibility of success where more conventional approaches would almost certainly fail. Chen was initially hesitant about the plan's complexity, but Sarah's confidence and the proven effectiveness of her methods throughout the evening convinced him to trust her tactical judgment. They began their approach with careful coordination, using tactile communication to maintain constant awareness of each other's status and the positions of the opposing forces. The movement to the third objective showcased Sarah's complete mastery of night operations. She navigated the difficult terrain with a capability that seemed almost supernatural, maintaining perfect awareness of Chen's position while avoiding detection by the defending forces. Their coordination was so precise that they moved like a single organism, adjusting to obstacles and threats with seamless efficiency. The final approach to the objective required them to operate within close range of multiple guards while maintaining perfect stealth. This was the kind of challenge that tested not just technical skill but mental discipline and the ability to execute under maximum pressure. Sarah's approach was methodical and confident, showing no signs of the stress that would affect most operators under these conditions. Their retrieval of the third intelligence item was completed without incident, and they began movement toward the fourth objective. By this point in the exercise, their partnership had evolved into something extraordinary. They communicated with efficiency that bordered on telepathic, anticipated each other's movements, and operated with tactical coordination that impressed all the instructors who were monitoring their progress. The fourth objective was positioned in the most challenging location yet, an area with minimal cover and patrol patterns that had been specifically designed to eliminate any teams attempting to reach it. Intelligence reports indicated that no team had successfully reached this objective during previous training exercises, and Thompson had positioned it as the ultimate test of tactical capability. Sarah's approach to this challenge demonstrated the full scope of her tactical innovation. She had developed techniques that went beyond traditional special operations doctrine, incorporating methods that were specifically designed for operations against sophisticated opposition forces. Her plan for reaching the fourth objective was unlike anything in standard tactical manuals, but it was based on sound principles and extensive testing. The execution required them to utilize every technique they had mastered throughout the evening. Their movement was coordinated with precision that allowed them to penetrate defenses that had stopped all previous attempts. When they successfully retrieved the fourth intelligence item, Thompson realized that he was witnessing capabilities that challenged his fundamental understanding of what was possible in special operations. The final objective was positioned at the extraction point, requiring teams to demonstrate that they could maintain tactical effectiveness even when exhausted and operating under maximum time pressure. For Sarah and Chen, this represented the culmination of everything they had accomplished throughout the night, proof that their techniques and capabilities could be sustained under the most demanding conditions imaginable. As they approached the extraction point, Thompson prepared to witness either the ultimate validation of Sarah's capabilities or the moment when exhaustion and pressure would finally reveal the limitations of her techniques. What he didn't anticipate was that Sarah had prepared for exactly this scenario, and her final demonstration would completely revolutionize his understanding of what modern special operations could achieve. The extraction point was deliberately positioned in the most challenging location Thompson could devise, an open area surrounded by elevated positions where opposing forces could maintain excellent observation and fields of fire. Teams that had survived the night's challenges would face one final test that would determine whether their tactical capabilities could be sustained under maximum pressure when exhaustion and time constraints were at their peak. Sarah and Chen approached the extraction zone with systematic precision that had characterized their entire operation. Despite having spent hours navigating hostile territory under extreme stress, neither showed signs of the mental fatigue that typically affected operators at this stage of demanding exercises. Sarah's preparation had included specific training for maintaining tactical effectiveness even when physical and emotional resources were depleted. Thompson positioned himself at the command post overlooking the extraction area, surrounded by instructors who had been monitoring the various teams throughout the night exercise. What they had observed from Sarah and Chen had consistently exceeded expectations, but Thompson remained convinced that the final challenge would reveal limitations that would validate his skepticism about unconventional tactical innovations. The intelligence reports for the extraction zone indicated the presence of at least 4 opposing force positions equipped with night vision and radio communication. Teams attempting extraction would have to cross approximately 200 meters of open terrain while avoiding detection by defenders who knew their exact approach routes and timing. Previous exercises had shown that successful extraction required exceptional tactical coordination and capabilities that very few candidates possessed. What Thompson didn't know was that Sarah had anticipated this exact scenario during her months of preparation. She had studied historical special operations extractions, analyzed the tactical challenges associated with crossing open terrain under hostile observation, and developed specific techniques for accomplishing exactly what they were now being asked to do. Using her tactile communication system, Sarah began explaining to Chun an extraction plan that was unlike anything in conventional military doctrine. Instead of attempting to avoid the defending forces through stealth or speed, her plan involved using advanced tactical deception techniques that would make their movement appear to be something other than what it actually was. The technique required them to approach the extraction zone in a manner that would initially appear to the defending forces as routine patrol activity. Sarah had observed the patrol patterns used by the instructors throughout the evening and identified an opportunity to mimic their movement signatures while actually approaching the extraction point. If executed correctly, they could reach their objective while the defending forces remained unaware that an extraction was taking place. Chen was initially skeptical about the plan's complexity, but Sarah's confidence and the proven effectiveness of her methods throughout the night convinced him to trust her judgment. They began their final approach with coordination that demonstrated everything they had learned about tactical communication and teamwork during the exercise. Thompson watched their movement through night vision equipment with growing confusion. Instead of the cautious approach he expected from candidates attempting to avoid detection, Sarah and Chun were moving with a confidence that suggested they had found some advantage that wasn't apparent to the instructors. Their approach pattern was unusual, but not obviously inappropriate, and Thompson couldn't immediately identify what tactical principle they were employing. The key to Sarah's plan was her ability to read and interpret the defending forces' reaction patterns. Through careful observation throughout their approach, she could determine whether their deception was working or if the defenders were becoming suspicious of their movement. This kind of real-time tactical assessment required skills that went far beyond basic military training. As they moved closer to the extraction point, Sarah's plan began to reveal its sophistication. The defending forces were observing their movement, but interpreting it as routine patrol activity rather than an extraction attempt. Sarah's study of human psychology and tactical decision-making had allowed her to develop deception techniques that exploited the natural tendency of observers to see what they expected to see. Their final approach to the extraction point was executed with timing that was measured in seconds. Using tactile communication to coordinate their movement, Sarah and Chun reached the extraction zone, while the defending forces remained convinced that they were observing normal patrol activity. The deception was so complete that the instructors didn't realize an extraction had been accomplished until Sarah and Chun appeared at the command post. Thompson stared at them in disbelief. "How did you reach the extraction point?" "Our observers reported routine patrol activity, but no extraction attempts were detected." His confusion was evident as he tried to understand how they had accomplished something that appeared to violate the basic parameters of the exercise. Sarah's response was calm and professional. "Sir, we utilized tactical deception techniques to make our movement appear to be patrol activity rather than an extraction attempt. The defending forces observed our approach, but interpreted it as routine activity because our movement signature matched their expectations for normal patrol operations." The explanation hit Thompson like a revelation. Sarah hadn't just completed the exercise. She had used tactical innovation to accomplish something that went beyond the intended parameters of the training scenario. Her techniques represented genuine advancement in special operations methodology that could have applications far beyond training exercises. Chun reinforced Sarah's explanation. "Sir, the deception techniques Martinez demonstrated tonight represent tactical capabilities I've never encountered before. Her ability to manipulate enemy perception while accomplishing mission objectives opens up operational possibilities that could revolutionize special operations planning." The other instructors who had been monitoring the exercise were equally amazed. What Sarah and Chun had accomplished represented the kind of tactical innovation that appeared in military textbooks years after being developed by exceptional operators in the field. They had witnessed the birth of new tactical methodology rather than simply the application of existing techniques. Thompson found himself confronting a fundamental shift in his understanding of tactical capabilities and military innovation. Throughout his career, he had operated under the assumption that significant tactical advancement came from institutional research and development rather than individual innovation. Sarah had proven that exceptional individuals could develop genuine improvements in military methodology through personal research and systematic testing. More importantly, Sarah's performance had challenged every assumption Thompson held about the characteristics that defined exceptional military operators. She had demonstrated capabilities that exceeded those of most experienced special operations personnel, and she had done it while facing skepticism and additional pressure that male candidates never encountered. Martinez, Thompson said, his tone now showing respect rather than skepticism. I need to understand how you develop these capabilities. The tactical innovations you've demonstrated tonight represent genuine advancement in special operations methodology. This isn't just impressive performance. This is innovation that could benefit all special operations forces. Sarah's response revealed the depth of preparation that had made her performance possible. Sir, I spent months analyzing historical special operations missions, identifying tactical gaps in existing procedures, and developing systematic solutions for each problem I identified. The techniques you've observed tonight represent hundreds of hours of research, testing, and refinement. She pulled out additional notebooks that documented her complete tactical development process. The research was extensive and professional, showing analysis of military operations from multiple conflicts, identification of common failure patterns, and systematic development of improved techniques for each tactical challenge she had studied. Thompson reviewed the documentation with growing amazement. Sarah's research was more comprehensive than many official military studies he had seen, and her methodology was systematic and professional. She hadn't just developed random innovations. She had identified specific tactical problems and created targeted solutions based on historical analysis and practical testing. What impressed Thompson most was Sarah's approach to validation and testing. She hadn't simply invented new techniques and assumed they would work. She had subjected each innovation to rigorous testing under progressively more challenging conditions. Her preparation had included scenarios that were deliberately more demanding than anything she expected to encounter in actual training. The other candidates who had observed portions of Sarah's performance throughout the day were gathering around to understand what had made her capabilities so exceptional. What they discovered was that Sarah's innovations weren't just impressive individual techniques. They represented a systematic approach to tactical development that any operator could learn and apply. Chun had become a vocal advocate for Sarah's methods. What Martinez has developed isn't just personal capability. It's a methodology for tactical innovation that could improve the performance of all special operations personnel. Her techniques for analyzing tactical problems and developing systematic solutions could revolutionize how we approach military training and operational planning. Thompson realized that his initial skepticism had been based on assumptions rather than objective analysis of Sarah's capabilities. Her performance hadn't just proven that women could succeed in special operations. It had demonstrated that exceptional individuals could emerge from any background and that innovation could come from unexpected sources. The implications went far beyond individual success or failure. Sarah's tactical innovations represented genuine advancement in military methodology that could improve the effectiveness of all special operations forces. Her techniques for communication, coordination, and tactical deception addressed real operational challenges that affected every unit in the military. More importantly, Sarah's approach to systematic tactical development provided a model for how military innovation should be pursued. Instead of waiting for institutional research and development programs, individual operators could identify tactical problems and develop solutions through personal research and testing. This kind of distributed innovation could accelerate the pace of military advancement significantly. As the exercise debriefing concluded, Thompson found himself fundamentally changed by what he had witnessed. His assumptions about capability, innovation, and the characteristics that defined military excellence had been challenged and proven wrong. Sarah had demonstrated that exceptional performance could come from unexpected sources and that genuine innovation often emerged from individual initiative rather than institutional programs. The night exercise had started as Thompson's attempt to challenge Sarah's capabilities and validate his skepticism about her tactical innovations. Instead, it had become a demonstration that revolutionized his understanding of what was possible in special operations and how military excellence should be defined and developed. Chen summarized the evening's significance perfectly. What we've witnessed tonight isn't just exceptional individual performance. It's a demonstration that military innovation can come from anyone who is willing to do the research, develop systematic solutions, and subject their techniques to rigorous testing. Martinez has proven that excellence isn't limited by background or demographics. It's determined by preparation, innovation, and the willingness to push beyond conventional limitations. Thompson's final assessment acknowledged the complete transformation of his perspective. Martinez, your performance tonight has exceeded every standard I use to evaluate special operations personnel. More importantly, your tactical innovations represent genuine advancement in military methodology that could benefit all operators regardless of their background or experience level. The revelation was complete. What had started as Thompson's attempt to prove that certain capabilities were limited to traditional candidates had instead demonstrated that exceptional performance and genuine innovation could emerge from unexpected sources. Sarah had not only proven her individual capabilities, she had shown that the future of special operations would be defined by innovation, systematic preparation, and the willingness to challenge conventional assumptions about what was possible. The signal that Thompson had claimed only SEALs use had been not just matched, but revolutionized by someone he had initially dismissed. Sarah Martinez had proven him wrong in the most complete way possible, by demonstrating capabilities that exceeded his own understanding of what elite military performance could achieve. In doing so, she had opened the door to a new era of special operations that would be defined by innovation rather than tradition, capability rather than demographics, and systematic preparation rather than institutional assumptions about military excellence.